Before the world had the internet, before we had books, newspapers, or even the concept of news, information was power. And that power belonged to the few. If you were born in Europe around the year 1400, chances are you couldn't read. And even if you could, there was nothing to read. Books were rare, fragile, and painfully expensive. Each one had to be copied by hand, letter by letter, word by word. Monks worked in silence, spending years producing a single Bible. It was sacred work, but it also meant that knowledge spread slower than disease. The poor couldn't afford education. The rich controlled what was written and what wasn't. Ideas didn't move. They stayed trapped inside monasteries and palaces. Then came a man who would break that silence. His name was Johannes Gutenberg, a goldsmith, inventor, and visionary born in Mainz, Germany. He wasn't a philosopher or a scholar. He wasn't trying to start a revolution. He was just a man obsessed with solving a problem. And that problem was, how do you reproduce knowledge faster? Around 1440, Gutenberg began experimenting. He studied wine presses and the kind used to crush grapes and realized something powerful. If you could press grapes into wine, maybe you could press ink onto paper. But the real genius was what came next. Instead of carving entire pages of text into wood like some early printers did, Gutenberg created movable metal type, individual letters that could be arranged, printed, and rearranged over and over again. It sounds simple now, but in the 15th century, it was like inventing the first computer keyboard. He mixed his own oil-based ink, thicker and darker than anything used before, and engineered a system that could handle thousands of impressions without breaking. Piece by piece, he built what we now call the Gutenberg press. And in 1455, after years of trial, error, and near bankruptcy, he unveiled his masterpiece, the Gutenberg Bible. It was stunning. 42 lines per page, perfectly balanced, crisp, and uniform. The text was so elegant that many thought it had been handwritten. But this wasn't just a book, it was a signal, the dawn of mass communication. For the first time in human history, ideas could travel faster than people. Within just a few decades, printing presses spread across Europe like wildfire. Suddenly knowledge wasn't locked away anymore. Books became cheaper, more common, and accessible to ordinary people. Literacy rates began to climb, universities expanded, thinkers found audiences they never had before. And with that came disruption. The Renaissance exploded. Art, science, philosophy, all fueled by the printed word. The Protestant Reformation ignited when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door, and within weeks printed copies were circulating across Europe. For the first time, people could read the Bible in their own language, without the church controlling interpretation. Printing didn't just change how people read, it changed how they thought. Information became dangerous. Monarchs, popes, and rulers suddenly realized they could no longer control what the public believed. The press had created something new, public opinion. But the story isn't all triumph. Gutenberg himself never enjoyed his success. His financier, Johann Fust, sued him, took over the printing press, and left Gutenberg broke. He died in poverty around 1468, likely unaware that his invention would reshape the world forever. And yet, his creation outlived him by centuries, because every revolution that followed, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Age, and now the digital age, all began with one idea: the freedom to spread information. When you look at the internet today, we did the memes, the news, the debates, the chaos. It's all Gutenberg's legacy running at light speed. The printing press was the prototype for the web, for social media, for everything we use to communicate today. When you tweet, post, publish, or create, you're doing what Gutenberg made possible, replicating ideas, multiplying thoughts, and connecting minds. The difference is scale. What once took months now takes milliseconds. But the principle hasn't changed. Gutenberg didn't just invent a machine, he invented the idea of sharing. He gave humanity the ability to think beyond borders, beyond language, beyond control. Because before Gutenberg, power came from having information. After him, power came from spreading it. He turned knowledge into something alive, something anyone could hold, read, and understand. And from that spark came everything that followed: democracy, science, literature, free speech, even the device you're watching this video on. Every word you read, every book you've ever loved, every thought that's ever challenged you, all of it traces back to one man in a small workshop in 15th century Germany, pressing ink into paper, unaware he was printing the future. Gutenberg's invention didn't just print pages, it printed freedom, it printed humanity's awakening, it printed us. And that's why, in the story of civilization, Johannes Gutenberg isn't just an inventor. He's the man who made the modern world readable.